Welcome to the Global Discussion, a discussion with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins. Today, delighted to be joined once again by Niamh Cooper. Niamh was actually on something called the Global Interview many, many moons ago. We had 400 written interviews, and Niamh was certainly one of those. But she's back with us for the Global Discussion. We're here in video and audio form this time, and there's an awful lot going on in Niamh's world. So, Niamh, you're very welcome to the show. Let's begin by asking maybe you to give a bit of an introduction to who you are, what you do, a little bit about your background. Then we'll get into some of the exciting things you've got happening in your world.
Thanks so much, Simon. And I'm delighted to be here today. And congratulations on the continued success as well of the global discussion. Very well worth a listen to various different podcasts that you have. So thanks so much. Yeah, I'm delighted to see you again. So yeah, it's just maybe a little bit about myself first. So I'm a writer, a creative, but also I suppose I have an absolute love for languages. And I credit that to my upbringing, Simon, which was a little bit unconventional. So I grew up in Germany, actually, which was a bit tricky with a name like Niamh, which obviously is not at all spelt like you pronounce it. My mum is from a tiny little village in West Cork. My dad, my late dad, was from the east coast of the States. So I grew up surrounded by languages. I ended up actually studying French and English because my dad also was a linguist. And so because of that, I think, I was always people used to ask me, what language do you dream in? And I could never answer that question. But when I was younger, it was most definitely German because I was immersed in German and surrounded really every day, going to school there, kindergarten, primary, secondary. And then I left because the challenge to myself, and you'll see actually in a minute, I actually love challenging myself. Sometimes rightly or wrongly so. But the challenge to myself really, Simon, because I always felt German was my stronger language. And so I actually had a place in Cologne and I decided, no, I wanted to go and live in Ireland. So at the tender age of 19, I left, packed my bags, never looked back. And I went and I wanted to study English. That was my goal, study English and kind of like earn my credentials. I mean, I was bilingual, but I didn't feel. So now if you ask me, I would say I probably dream in English now because I'm using my German less. But yeah, so that in a nutshell is me. But even from a very young age, both my parents were teachers. My mother had a very unusual habit of double booking herself. So very soon from a young age, I'd say about 12, 13, 14, my mother would be sitting down giving an English lesson and there'd be a knock at the door and she'd have double booked herself. So one of us would have to jump in and just teach on the cuff. So it taught me an awful lot about, pivoting, flying by the seat of your pants and picking things up quickly and also teaching. And that's where my love for helping people as well came from. So that's kind of it, really, in a nutshell, about me.
Well, I think that's part of the story because we're going to come on to some really interesting stuff now, Niamh. And thank you for sharing that with our worldwide audience. The thing I want to talk about, though, is since we last were in touch, you have launched something called Word Matters. You
Yeah.
have a writer's corner as part of that. And
Absolutely.
also, I suppose, in the world of AI,
Mhm.
you're actually really crafting copy here and interesting information. Tell us all about Word Matters. What's going on there, Niamh?
Absolutely. Thanks, Simon. So yeah, so by day I'm a writer anyway. So, and I do project management. Also, my latest project was actually a writing competition for An Post, which is the postal service here in Ireland. They had a writing competition for primary schools, so I was project managing that. And just in general, I suppose, what propelled me to launch Word Matters is that I'm kind of at a cusp, in one sense, in my own career. So, as I said to you, I'm project managing. I keep being drawn back to education and teaching, which I absolutely love. But simmering underneath the surface has always been the writing. And I mean, I really have done it on and off, from when I was a teenager, as I mentioned earlier. I was writing poetry in 2 languages, probably very badly, you know, inspired by the music of Madonna, which she may not, you know, I like her still, but she may not be well known for her lyrics, let's just say. But yeah, so Word Matters now, what propelled me really was that I just feel that there's so many of us that just absolutely have a passion for stories, and in the technical world, and I absolutely love technology, but you know, with the advent of AI and everything, I just felt it was important to launch a business where people just get supported, not just by machines anymore, but by someone who kind of will listen, who will try and understand their journey, their story, and not just give like a response that is just canned. And you know, you can still tell if things are written by AI. Now, I do have actually great respect for AI, and I think it's fantastic. I know there are downsides also. I think it is something that you have to embrace it, or you'll be left behind. You know, and I do use it myself. Of course, I do. I mean, I think a lot of us would at this point be not very truthful if we said we didn't. But when it comes to crafting personalized content, you know, I write a lot for businesses, I do copy for websites, I do social media, you know, in order to do that. So I have, you know, I do social media for 2 businesses here in West Cork, and they're both based in Bandon. They're restaurants and cafes, which is food being another love of mine. And, you know, in order to write for others, you have to really kind of understand them, get to know them, and know their story, know their background. Why are they doing what they're doing? What, you know, gets them to wake up every morning? What's their passion? So my passion is writing, and my passion is helping people. So that's where Word Matters comes in. So it has kind of 2 aspects, if you like. One is, you know, working with corporations. You know, I've worked with Microsoft, Amazon, I've worked in AOL, various different companies. And I also spent, well, I suppose 15 plus years in publishing as well. Again, back to my writing. So that's kind of one side of it. The other side is a writer's corner, which you touched on. So the writer's corner, the more I talk to people, Simon, I mean, a lot of us have a book in us. I think people do generally say that, don't they? There's a story there I need to tell. Maybe it's just a part of your life, a piece of the timeline, but people do have a story waiting to burst out of them. And people do struggle with how do I go about it? How do I get started? You know, down to procrastination, you know, where there's so many things bombarding us every day. It's so much easier to scroll, and before you know it, half an hour has passed and you've scrolled, and what have you done? So I think it's kind of like I work with people to just kind of reframe, a bit of mindset reframing, like in terms of like, you actually do have the time. It's maybe that's my project management side coming in as well. It's just really how you organize your time. And if you're really serious about it, then why aren't you doing it? And that's very easy for me to say, because I myself am an absolute master of procrastination. But that's why I understand what it's like.
Well, thank you for sharing that in terms of Word Matters and the great work that you're doing there. I think in the world of AI and everything that's happening so fast, you've only got to look at the news this week to next week, and it changes completely. There's new tools coming out all the time. But having that human element, somebody that can actually go over that and make it meaningful, particularly with some of the large brands that you mentioned, whether it's, you know, Microsoft, or whether it's Amazon, or back in the day, AT&T. And I know you've worked with a lot of publishers too, like Folans and Gill and others, right? But you've been writing everything from short stories, novels, and corporate content for what, over 2 decades now, probably more at this stage. And you've got huge experience as an editor. You've been a commissioning editor. You've been a publisher, and you've also done a lot of project management, of course, and that senior content management, which is
Yeah.
kind of what we're touching on here. So that's a really exciting new sort of avenue that you're expanding into, taking all your experiences and bringing that to life. Now, you mentioned earlier, you said the word challenge, and I want to come back to that, because you're no strangers to challenging yourself. And there's a bit of a connection here to Stephen Bartlett, and everybody knows Stephen Bartlett at this stage, I'm sure. Tell us what's happening with this sort of challenge that you're involved in, Niamh.
Absolutely. So I'm not sounding smug here, or maybe I am, but I was in the Algarve a few weeks ago, doing actually a yoga retreat because I needed a bit of a reset myself. And I had actually booked this a long time ago. And when the time came, of course, it was never the right time, but I had it booked, so I couldn't get out of it. So I was like, right, I'm going to do this. And while I was there, I just had a bit of calm, I suppose. You know, when you're at home, you're always distracting yourself. But actually, I had no excuse. And suddenly one day I sat down and I started writing. And I set myself a little challenge, as one does. But also during that time, I stumbled across the stand challenge. Now, I don't know, have you heard of that, Simon? The stand challenge?
I'm not too familiar with it, but for the benefit of everybody listening around the world, bring that to life for us, because the stand challenge and I think stand store is
Yes.
something that's really, really interesting. So tell us a bit more about it, Niamh.
So I had actually heard of stand store before because I do create, I'm always creating something. I think creative people, I don't know, just always are working on something. And one of the things that I've been working on, I suppose, is just resources for this writer's corner for Word Matters. So that could be digital products, downloads, and I was looking for somewhere like a platform where I could easily upload. There are platforms out there, but I actually had discovered Standstore because it is very, very intuitive and it isn't convoluted and it is really just a few clicks. So I was about to actually, I had started preparing some products. I was about to embark and I said, oh my goodness, I stumbled across a video by Stephen Bartlett, whom I follow anyway on LinkedIn. And he basically announced that he had become an investor in Standstore. And I was like, Standstore, I've heard of this. So, of course, I decided that I needed to be part of it. Now, I did actually join it late, but I did join it. And basically, the stand challenge is just getting creatives and basically anybody who wants to open a store. And now my focus is digital products, but you can sell other things there as well. Just, the challenge was 30 days. And anybody who wants to, it could be anything, could be mindfulness, it could be, there's all sorts of people from all walks of life on it. And I suppose what I like about it, Stephen, is that it does one thing that a lot of us find difficult to do, including myself, which is actually just building habits and showing up. And it's so easy, but it's so hard, and I often am inspired by my dad. Used to have a tiny little notebook and he used to keep it in his pocket, and he consistently did the things he loved doing. He played the violin, he was an avid reader, he was actually also a linguist, which is probably where I get that. And similar with my mother, she regularly would teach, and had dates in her diary, and she'd show up and teach, sometimes having to show up twice, but these consistent habits that I think we've lost a bit of sight of building. So I was like, right, if I don't join this challenge, it's just easier to say, no, I'm not going to do it. So it's giving yourself these little pushes. And of course, because, as you say, I love challenges, I decided to just go one more and push myself even more. And I myself have actually created a writing challenge. And it's open to anybody. And it started today and it's free. Now, you don't have to start today if you don't want to, because one thing I wanted to remove from it. Now, there are some brilliant writing challenges out there, don't get me wrong. But I think what stops a lot of us from taking part in those is that they're just so either word count driven or date driven, or they're putting another pressure on something that really should be, for a lot of people, a hobby. Writing is a hobby, or it is a pastime, or it's a passion, or it's something people are doing to maybe wind down or to get their voice heard or to get their story out. It shouldn't be a chore. So the writing challenge that I've launched is basically start to story in 30 days. It doesn't have to be 30 consecutive days, but I'm doing it in 30 consecutive days because part of my commitment for my writers community on Word Matters is that I show up every day consistently and I take part in the challenge. And it's just small prompts. And so, you have different, so there's like 4 weeks, obviously, and there's different focus on different weeks. It could be character, it could be setting, it could be your villain. and just thinking about kind of unusual things. And because I started writing this book in the Algarve, and I'm 14,000 words in because I was able to show up consistently every day and just write a little bit every day since then. I want to continue that. So if anybody wants to just start, or if they've started and they've stopped for whatever reason, because a lot of us do that as well, just, find my Stan Store on Word. It's called Word Matters. It's on the Stan Store link, and just join. It's a free download. It's PDF. Very, very simple format. This challenge itself, it's on one page. And I'd love if people would join, just to get people writing. I think that would be a really nice thing to do.
It sounds great, and I'm sure people can go and check that out on Stan Store, look for Word Matters and get involved. Yeah, that's great.
Brilliant.
Now, you mentioned retreat, and you sort of snuck into our conversation that you just happened to be in the Algarve. But I know retreats are something that you're kind of passionate about, and you've also got something pretty cool coming up with retreats. So again, expand on that for me, Niamh, right? Because I think that's very interesting too, what you're doing here.
Sure. So basically, in a previous life, when I was working on a German language magazine, I met actually some really, really interesting creatives. And a few of these have become really good friends of mine, actually, kind of moving from editing, learning design to other things. And one of my good friends, Veronique Gauthier-Simmons, has actually a business. Basically, she had to completely pivot her life due to an illness, and she has started a business called Taming the Walrus, which is a funny, quirky name, but it has a meaning. Which she explains on her website, tamingthewalrus.com. Just giving her a little plug. So she has been, she basically for health reasons moved to the Algarve, and has started running yoga and breathwork retreats. And she also writes, and we've often put our heads together to work on little projects. Actually, she's like myself. She always has something going on. There's always something simmering, and there's always an idea. So we had actually had this idea before I went on as a participant to this retreat, but I suppose we thought that we would actually offer a combined writing, yoga, and breathwork retreat. It's something that is maybe a little bit of a unique, unusual combination, but having experienced firsthand what she actually does, she's absolutely fantastic. It's a very safe environment where people aren't judged. You just go there, and in the first instance, it's just a relaxing and amazing place. It's 25 minutes from Faro Airport, so it's a little bit in the hills, really, really accessible. And it's just a very, I can't describe it in any other way. It's just a really magical place. And it did something to me, it unlocked something in me. So we had had this idea a while back, and now we've actually sat down and decided what we're going to do. And it's going to be a weekend in October, from the 17th to the 9th of October. And we'd be absolutely delighted if people were interested in finding out more. I have an Instagram page, Word Matters Global, or else there's Taming the Walrus as well, which is also Veronique's Instagram page. And we literally only today started releasing some details on the retreat. We're keeping it quite small. It's residential. Veronique's husband Peter is just a fantastic chef. There's a lot of plant-based food, which initially I thought, oh my God, I'm going to miss my steak, but literally you don't. And it's just fantastic. And it's good for the body, the mind, and the soul. And hopefully it'll unlock something for people who want to get their stories out there. So I'm really delighted to be doing this in October. And hopefully we'll be the first of many.
Wow, it sounds incredible. And look, you mentioned you're no stranger to challenges. You love challenges. And, we've touched on a lot already. We've talked about Word Matters. We've talked about Stephen Bartlett and the Stan challenge that you're involved in, the Writers' Corner and community that you have going stronger than ever. And of course, now you're in the retreats business, which just sounds incredible. So congratulations, Niamh. Before I run out of time, though, I do want to put a couple more questions to you.
Sure.
With all this that's going on, and I know you're still writing, What's on your roadmap? What are you thinking about for the next 6 to 12 months? Is it working on the projects that we've been discussing today? What are you thinking about? What's on your horizon?
So I suppose, like there's definitely, I think, a lot to be done on word matters. So I think I want to continue and sort of build on that business. It's really just actually in the early enough stages, and I'm, delighted to help corporations, build out their content and also keep it maintained. I have worked in WordPress. I've actually also worked. I had a stint as a journalist as well, so I know SEO and all that kind of good stuff that you need to know these days. And keeping your content current and up to date, I suppose, is a challenge for many businesses. So I'm hoping that I can lend a helping hand there. Obviously, I mentioned social media, but I also want to spend a little bit of time really when it comes down to it. At the end of the day, I really just love helping people and supporting people. And, I have, as you mentioned, experience in the publishing side of things. I've worked in educational publishing for a very long time, over 15 years. And I just want to, I suppose, help support people who are starting on their writing journey, just to help them unlock their voice. In fact, the retreat name is Find Your Voice, the retreat in the Algarve. So just in with all the noise that's going on in this world, just, it's a lot of it has to do as well with just people finding back to themselves and maybe the stories they always wanted to tell, and for whatever reason they either didn't have time, or maybe they weren't heard, or for whatever reason they didn't speak up to tell their story, which happens to a lot of us as well. So that's kind of a lot of the focus. And I suppose, as you say, I do love a challenge. So I am continuing to carve out a bit of time to write myself. And I do try and enter competitions where I can. It is something that just it takes a lot of time to do. I mean, I was very fortunate, when I do get to do it, I write flash fiction. I write poetry. One of my poems came in second. I actually wrote it during COVID when we had a lot more time for these things. But it's sort of, one of those poems that just kept on gaining attention. I actually was broadcast in New York as well, which was amazing, amazing feeling. So yeah, I think the writing and the words is the main focus. And who knows what might happen after the challenges I'm currently doing for the next 30 days anyway. I have two challenges. And moving on then, hoping to, I suppose, finish my novel. Publishing it is obviously not an easy thing. But yeah, that's the plan for now anyway. So who
Well, you've
knows?
you've got a lot going on, Niamh, that's for sure. And I'm going to ask you two last things before we wrap
Sure.
up. And
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you in a moment for any parting thoughts or anything you want to leave us
Mhm.
with. But before we do that, if people want help finding their voice,
Yeah.
find out more about Word Matters, find out about the retreat, maybe join you on the retreat, and get involved in the community and all the challenges that we've talked about today. Where's the best place that you want to point people to?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. So basically, I am on actually Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. I've actually also set up a Facebook page. But the easiest way is wordmattersglobal@gmail.com. People can get me there. And just or else check out my Instagram and various social pages, and just send me a DM, and I'd be delighted to if people got in touch. I really would.
Well, that's great. And look, again, before we wrap up,
Mhm.
we're looking for some parting thoughts. What do you want to leave us with to think about, or maybe something new, something we've talked about already that you want to expand upon? What are your parting thoughts for our international audience, Niamh?
I suppose, especially especially a thing for women. I suppose that we take on so many roles, and we become so many different things in our lifetime. We are a girl, we are a mother, we are a partner. We have all these roles, and then we're working as well, and we're doing all these things. And I suppose one thing, all the work that I've been doing over the last few decades has taught me is just always go back to your gut and your gut feeling, and follow where your passion is, and just try and find your voice again. And and go for it. You know, a lot of women like myself, won't mention an age, but my eldest has actually just finished college, and my youngest is about to start college. So she, you know, I'll have an empty house, and we have to constantly start new chapters and find ourselves again. So I would just say, just follow your passion, go with your gut, and try and reignite that voice inside yourself.
Well, that's some great thoughts to leave us with, Niamh. Thank you so much indeed. And it brings us nicely to the end of our conversation here today on the global discussion. I want to thank everybody around the world who's either watching or listening to this episode, however you're doing that on whatever platform. We certainly appreciate it. Make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, do everything that I need you to do to help support the global discussion. And go and check out everything that Niamh Cooper is doing. Go and check it out on Instagram. Go and check out Word Matters. Get involved in that Stan challenge on the Stan store. Just look for Word Matters there and maybe find out more about the retreat. Niamh would love to hear from you. But all that remains for me to do is to ask everybody to join me back here for some more discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Niamh. But Niamh, it's been wonderful to talk to you again today. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Simon, for having me on the show. It was my absolute pleasure. And who knows, we might meet again in maybe less than 5 years this time.
Thanks, Niamh.
Thank you so much.